Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, brothers and sisters all over the world. Whatever time of the day, whatever time of the evening, this message finds you all over the world. And yes, I am talking to each and every one of you all over the world. The name of this channel is The African Times, and I'm Thomas. Good morning, brothers and sisters. It's morning for me. It's pretty early. Couldn't really sleep. Had to get up. And wanted to talk to you a little bit about something that was on my mind. It's been on my mind for a long time, actually many years. So I'll kind of get right to it. I want to talk to you about the medical system, the Western medical system, the W system. The W system, the Western medical system, is the system that I grew up in. Many of you out here grew up in, many of us. So we're going to talk about that. Now, before I kind of go into it, I'm also going to talk to you about my mother. You know, my mother was murdered, and I know who murdered her. They're still out walking around. They're still out murdering other people. It's clear and evident. I know who it is. And so, like I said, I'm going to talk to you about the medical system, the W system. I'll probably talk to you again, just to be clear, about my mother and how she was murdered. She was tortured too. Tortured to death up until her last days. Alright, so I'm going to talk to you about that. Now, before I get in, since we're talking about the medical system, and we should probably do, the old disclaimer. Hey, I'm not a doctor. No. Not claiming to be one. But if you have any medical issues, isn't this what they tell us? Make sure you consult your doctor, consult your physician. I'm not here to give you medical advice. No. In fact, let me be clear. All I'm talking to you about right now is sharing with you my personal experience. Personally, what I experienced. And me, myself, I, no one else. The experience of my mother. I was there. I participated in it. So I'm just going to share that with you. All right. Now, the reason I said the disclaimer is because, where I'm from, since I'm talking to everybody in the whole world, where I'm from is a big concept or notion, idea, ideology, philosophy that's put into us from the time that we're very little children. It's freedom. Freedom of speech is what I'm talking about right now. Freedom. But freedom. The stars, the stripes, the whole nine. Freedom. Freedom of speech. Okay. But even now, in this video, I'm not free to say what I want to say. I'm not free to do that. Because, we hear this term often a lot, like tariffs, sanctions, taxation, punitive, damages, um, all those things. So when you talk about like a sanction, and I'm going to come back to you. Please understand, I'm talking about the medical system. But before I can go into that, I have to make sure you understand my freedom is limited, just like yours. It's limited. No free speech. Mythology, free speech, mythology. So the tariffs, the sanctions, meaning that's a form of power. Somebody is sanctioning you, meaning the tariff, a tax. If you do something, you're going to incur this result, this negative result. And then when you incur that negative result, that means your behavior has to be changed if you don't want to incur the negative result, which means the person in power, the person who can impose the tariff, to impose the tax, impose the sanction, if they have a desired behavior that they want you to show, to exhibit, then they enact the sanction, the tariff, the tax. And then you are coerced, persuaded to take the action that they want you to take. Okay? Now, how does this relate to the medical thing that I'm about to talk to you about? Well, remember I told you freedom of speech. I know that if I say certain things, that the ability to continue to talk about whatever I want to talk about on this medium may be taken away from me. You know, a sanction, a gag order, a cease and desist, I think is what they determine. So knowing that, then am I free to speak and say? Is there freedom of speech? No. And for those of you who, want to cling to the notion that, well, that's just, you have to have the right. So some people, they can't say anything because it can hurt other people and all that. I understand that, but it still goes back to, okay, which people are determining those parameters of what is appropriate to say and what is not. And if those people who do that have an agenda that does not serve the interest of all the people, in a good way, with good intentions and goodwill, then their restrictions on what you can say will again lead your behavior to a certain result, just like the sanction, the tariff, or what have you. Just last point about that, just so you understand. If somebody makes a better ice cream cone than you do, it's tastier, it has a better color, it's got an aroma, a flavor, and they make it better than you do, and they can make it cheaper than you can. So they start bringing it into your neighborhood. Now, because you sold ice cream, you aren't selling as many ice cream cones because the people in your neighborhood, they want to get the other one that's more tasty, it smells good, it looks good, and the price is lower. So they're going to go over there. Now, you and your buddies who control the neighborhood, y'all can get together and go, okay, well, look, we want to keep this illusion going that it's free markets and free speech because we got this free concept going. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, it's fair for you to come in here and sell your ice cream. We want you to be able to do that because free market and all. But we have a policy. We have a rule that when outsiders come in, they have to pay a tariff, a tax. Or, if you don't, we sanction you. Meaning, you pay us extra money for the ice cream, which means now you got to raise the price of the ice cream. And if you don't do that, then we sanction you and tell you you're not allowed to sell in here at all. So which would you like? You can choose this bad situation or you can choose that bad situation. You see? This is what is is happening with our freedom of speech. Okay, so again, I'm talking about the medical system, Western medical system, W system. But I do want to let you know I'm also talking about, I just want to kind of share a story with you about the people who murdered my mother. Now, I'm about to go into it, but keep in mind, you have to think. You have to listen and use your analytical skills, your ability to reason, your ability to rationalize information, to be able to uh, interpret the meaning of what's being said to you. You have to do that. You really have to do that with everything you do in your life. I mean, it's very serious. It's a very serious thing. So I'm going to start now. So okay, cool. So this medical system, can you trust it? The people who look like me, can you trust it? And other people too. But I'm talking to the people that look like me. And the reason I'm asking you, can you trust this medical system, is because the medical system is organized by a group of people. And with the Western medical system, that group of people, in large part, they don't look like you and me. Now, I've been alive a little while, and I've had some experience dealing with these people. So let me tell you, we're going to talk a little bit about diabetes, kidney failure, or whatever they call it, the little fancy name they give it, and dialysis. Okay. All right. So when I was 30, like the way I look now, I was heavier. I was much heavier. I would say 40 pounds heavier. Okay. But I still look generally like this, but I look buff because I lift weights and I run and I exercise. So back then, I went to the doctor for a checkup because the Western medical system tells you, they give you these time frames when you should go and get checked out as a man, and every routine go and do this. And so I went there, and they told me that the doctor, St. Clair Shores, Michigan, I would like to tell you his name, but there's that freedom of speech thing again. And I would like to tell you his name because he's a danger. He's a danger to people, and I'm about to tell you why. He's a danger. He's a danger. He was a danger to me. Thank goodness I made some different choices because of that rationalizing, that reasoning, that ability to do my own research, because I can read too. And you can too. Many of you can read. You can read this information that many of them read. The doctors, they just read books. They go through some studies and they get some practical exercise, doing some things, but for the most part, they're reading books. They're reading information. So I go to this doctor for this checkup, and like I said, I'm about 30. And he tells me that, my blood pressure is high. And my blood pressure, my cholesterol, and that I had to take pills to lower my cholesterol, primarily my cholesterol, and blood pressure. So I was like, man, is there something I can do? Like, man, you saying I got to take this pill for the rest of my life? I'm 30 years old. He's like, well, yeah, you could do some things. You could try some things. You could, I was like, well, can I do something with my diet? He said, yeah, maybe eat some oatmeal, keep that in your diet. Cut back on some of the things. Like I used to eat a lot of shrimp. He said, cut back on that. But for the most part, it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to do it. You need to take these pills. So I was like, wow. All right, well, let me think about it. So I went away and I started, researching, reading, getting information. Ran across a video, Forks Over Knives. And I'm not here to promote that or advertise that. I'm not here to do any of that. I'm not here to do that. I'm just telling you what my experience was. And remember, my mother was murdered. She was murdered at this time, shortly after this. Shortly after this. That's why I'm telling you, I want to give you the foundation so you can see. So, oh, by the way, let me mention to you, this doctor, he was our family doctor. This doctor was my mother's doctor. Okay? All right. So, anyway, I researched, I ran across a video called Food That Kills. I'm not promoting anything. You do your own thing. As I told you, follow your doctor's advice. That's what you want to do. But you can also read yourself and get some information. So anyway, I ran across these videos, and basically they said cut out the meat. That's what they said. The meat is causing your blood pressure to rise. I'm giving you a basic synopsis. Go look at it yourself. Your blood pressure to rise is creating the cholesterol. There's the oil from the meat getting in your arteries, clogging them up so that the blood can't get through. And for me, I had a choice. Either I'm going to take a pill for the rest of my life or I'm going to change my diet. Because they say if you just change your diet, all those problems will go away. So I was like, okay. Now let me just mention to you first, before I tell you, I did change my diet. Immediately. I'm that kind of person. I'm disciplined like that. I changed my diet immediately. So, I lost probably 10 pounds pretty quickly in probably like 2 weeks because I just ate salad. Lettuce, tomatoes, onions, cucumbers. That's it. I ate it 3-4 times a day. Big bowls of it. Every day. And the weight fell off. But what I was going to tell you, and I'm going to get back to that, is remember he said take these pills for the rest of my life. I don't know what those pills are, and neither do you. The doctors, they don't even know either. Okay? They don't know. You got to be a chemist. You getting a pill or something that's manufactured. It didn't grow out of the ground. It didn't grow from a tree. Now they're going to tell you, well, we made it from, we took some plants from, Brazil, and, we went to the jungles and we got, okay. And then they give you a pill. I don't know what that pill is. I can be honest with myself. I don't know what that is. I really don't. I just know what they tell me it is. And it's up to me to choose to believe them or not. I don't have a microscope. Even if I did it, I crack it open, I look at it, I got to do years and years of research to figure out and understand what I'm looking at. Okay? Now these are just reasonable, rational facts that we all are affected by, whether we want to deal with them or not. So anyway, I chose to take the food. I lost the weight immediately. So 6 months later, I go back to the doctor for a checkup. Went to a different doctor, though. And they checked my numbers. And we're going to talk about these numbers because what's normal? Remember, a certain group of people in the medical system, the Western medical system, the W system, they're the ones who tell you what's normal. They tell you what's normal. You don't know that. I don't know that. So we got to go through and we got to trust these people. Okay. All right. So I go to a different doctor and I told him I had, high cholesterol and high blood pressure. And he was like, what? What are you talking about? I say, isn't that what you just ran the test, the blood test and all this? Not a very elaborate physical examination. And he was like, your blood pressure was some ridiculous number. They tell us, I think 80 over 120 or 120 over 80, whatever it is, I don't remember. But mine was so low that I thought I was unhealthy. I thought, oh my God, He's like, no, it's how do you feel? I was like, I feel great. I feel fantastic. He's like, well, no, your numbers are just like that of like a teenager. You know, um, it's all fine as long as you feel good. They're fine. And my cholesterol, he said, you don't have cholesterol issue. There's nothing wrong with your cholesterol at all. Okay. Now, remember I told you this is the same time that the person who murdered my mother, that person was stalking my mother, mm-hmm. pursuing her to kill her intentionally. Okay. So then my mother, around the same time, she goes back to the same doctor I saw. And the doctor had told her that she had, I think it's end stage renal disease or whatever. You know, whatever they call it, the kidney thing where her they were saying she was down to some ridiculously low number where her kidney was only functioning at this low number. So they wanted to prepare her for a fistula thing that they put in your arm to get you ready for dialysis. Now, at that time, I was young. I didn't know what I know now. I didn't know how to really, really dig in and research and read and investigate. I didn't know how to do that. And I was still a victim of the kind of propaganda that is put out about how great the Western medical system is. It's the best system in the world. It's the only system in the world. Everybody else who has a different way of doing things, they're all crazy. They're all wrong. And if it doesn't meet the standard of the West, then it's not good. Okay. So I was still a victim of that. My mother, she grew up in the 40s. So she believed everything that the people told her because the propaganda was heavy then. That's back during the war years. You know, the big war, the World War, World War II. But she grew up and she was a person who always wanted to do right. She wanted to do good. So she believed whatever the doctors told her. And this particular doctor, along with his team, who dealt with the renal, I think endocrinologist, I think. So anyway, they tell my mother that she needs, in the office visit, that she has this problem. Now, at the time, my aunt was with her. And at that time, they gave my aunt the same physical, and coincidentally, right? And I don't believe in coincidence. But coincidentally, they told my aunt she had the same problem. All right? Now, I'm going to jump forward in future. That was in the past. I'm going to go to the future from that event. Not the future from today forward, but back then. So I'm going to jump, say, 10 years from when they told my aunt that, and my mother, in the same office with the same doctors, same people, that that both of them had diabetes and kidney failure and that they needed to start dialysis. Okay? So they talked about it with their families. My mother talked about it with her family. I was away at the time, and I was getting the information secondhand. Let me get some coffee for a second. I don't want it to get cold. This may not be good for me either, but I like the cup, you know. So they talk about it. My mother wanting to do the right thing, believing the people, and afraid for her life. Because that's one of the things that they do. They frighten you. Remember I told you? The sanctions, the taxes, the tariffs. Well, that's kind of like the premise of the tariff or the tax. If you don't do this, this will happen. So you kind of persuaded, coerced into going in this direction. The fear for your life is one of the greatest motivators that we have. All right. So my mother, she started the dialysis. She started it. Remember I told you I was going to jump ahead? So it's 10 years later. My mother's body is deformed. She's a vibrant woman. Vibrant, strong woman. Vibrant, strong woman. I'll give you an example. My mother was a woman now, in her 40s, playing baseball with kids. Guy hit a line drive straight at my mother. She was pitching. Line drive straight at her. This woman jumped up in the air, grabbed it. Do you understand me? It's a vibrant woman. Strong. But at this time, after dialysis, I don't know, 5 years maybe, 7 years. Body frail, thin. Now remember, the dialysis chose to help her, clean her blood, all this. Okay, all right, so, but now remember, I told you they told my aunt the same thing. My aunt, she said she ain't doing it. She was afraid. She didn't do it. Now I'm going to jump to present day. My mother, she's not with us anymore. She's not with us anymore. My aunt, she's still alive. Still alive. No fistula. No dialysis. 2-3 days. 3 days a week. Okay. All right. Now, I hope you remember that. Understand, because we're talking about the medical system. All right. So I'm going to go back in time again. Once I found out that my mother had that problem, that was one of my main motivations for going to the doctor to get the checkup. When he told me I had high blood pressure, I was at the beginning stages of diabetes, and that my cholesterol was high. I had to do that because I wanted to give my mother a kidney. I wanted to give her a kidney so she could live. I would do anything to help my mother. Remember black women? Remember what I told you? I love you. It's like my mama. You brought us here. No, I love you. I love you until death, to the end. So that was my motivation for going to get the checkup. So I was not a match for my mother. They have a program called a paired match program. I wasn't a match for my mother, but I was so determined I had to find a way, and I was lucky enough to find that they got this program where you can give your kidney to somebody else who you're a match for, and if that person doesn't have a match, they find somebody who's a match for whoever you're trying to give the kidney to, in this case, my mother. So I started going through this program. It's a very elaborate test that they give you to find out whether or not you're able to give the person the kidney. So as I'm going through this, I go through the specialist, the guy who's the top guy, the top doctor, who's supposed to tell you that you're okay to give the kidney. And so when I go to him, he's like, no, you have no issues with cholesterol, diabetes, nothing like that. Your diabetes, you borderline, but if you keep losing the weight, that's going to go away too. This is what he told me. And I said, well, how much do I need to weigh in order for me to be able to give my mother this kidney and be able to get this diabetes away from me? He said preliminary stages of diabetes. So the only way they would allow you to give to your mother, me, the only way they would allow me to give her the kidney is if I was not in danger of diabetes. So I had to lower. He said, well, you go back to high school. How much did you weigh in high school? That's the weight you need to be at in order for this issue of your diabetes, preliminary diabetes. Because I didn't have diabetes, but I was on the verge, they said. So I kept losing weight, eating the vegetables only, lost all the weight, came back. They still wouldn't let me give her a kidney. They said, well, it's hereditary. You got 2 of the strikes against you. It's hereditary. Now, listen to me carefully. Remember, 3 doctors now told me the diabetes would go away once I lost the weight. I changed my diet on my own. And they said, the one doctor said I needed the pills for the rest of my life. All of that wasn't true. I just changed my diet. I stopped eating the meat. I started eating just only vegetables. Lost the weight. The weight came off easy. Now, of course, I exercise. I'll be honest with you now. See, I exercise. I put in an hour, hour and a half of exercise. 3-4 times a week. Sometimes 5-6. So, and back then I was running too. So, I don't want to mislead you. I want you to understand. But the bottom line was I changed my diet. They still wouldn't let me give my mother a kidney. So remember I was telling you, my mother was murdered. She was murdered. And I told you she was being stalked. All right? So, what ended up happening is my mother continued her dialysis for about, I think she was on dialysis maybe 10 years. Let me see. Yeah, she probably was on there about 10, 12 years. Okay. At the end, she was tired. She didn't want to do it anymore because her body had gotten so destroyed that the quality of life was horrible. So let me give you one last example of what happened to her. Okay. She was going to a dialysis center. And me and her, we had a very talk. My mother knew she was going to die. She's a very strong, courageous lady. She knew she was going to die. And she said, well, I don't really want to do this anymore. And once I love my mom. Yes, I love her. So if she tells me something, I'm going to try to carry it out until I die. I'm going to try to do what she wants because I love her. And I want the best for her, just like I love you women. I don't care what these other people say. It don't matter to me. I know nature put me here to love you. And that's what I'm going to do. So anyway, she said she didn't want to go. So I had this internal struggle with my family because they were afraid. They didn't want to do what my mother said because they loved her. They didn't mean anything bad, but they thought they were doing some good thing by maybe she doesn't know, maybe we got to help her. But she said she didn't want to, so she didn't want to go. So the last time I took her, because I was taking her in the morning, 3 days a week, my mother had stopped eating. She had stopped eating for 2 weeks. Eating and drinking, she stopped. So these people, with this dialysis thing that they tell you, so they go through and they say, well, I ask them, I say, man, listen, I'm bringing my mother here, but listen, we got to stop something. We got to change something. She needs to stop this because she hasn't eaten. And they told me the purpose of the dialysis, this is what they told us in the beginning and throughout. The purpose of the dialysis is to drain the fluid off of her body because her kidneys can no longer do that. So they have to do it themselves and clean the impurities out of her blood. You know, the whole nine that they roll out. Okay. So I'm telling the guy at the dialysis center, okay, even if that's true, bro, my mother hasn't eaten or drank anything in 2 weeks. So there can't be any additional fluid in her blood to take out. Now I'm telling him, because I was with her every day, I know. Oh no, we know, we do a test, we do. Okay. So he puts her on the machine. And then her entire body starts to cramp up. She starts to have convulsions or something. And they're like, oh, what's going on? I said, I told you, man, she didn't have any water on her body. She didn't have anything. We got to get her off. They got to stop the machine. It's not enough fluid in her body. Yes, I told you that, clown. So then he said, well, okay, yeah, we must have taken off too much. So he said, well, bring her back, maybe give her half the dialysis. You see? Do you see the problem? Are you doing what I told you to do in the beginning? Rationalize, reason for yourself. He said, bring her back. Okay, now I'm going to jump to one last thing. Remember I just told you that they over-dialyzed her. She didn't have any water on her. Nothing. There was nothing to take out. She hadn't eaten or drank. So what impurities are you trying to take out? Now, at this point, Her body, imagine now, we have bones in our body. That's what keeps us solid. The form. See here? Form. Form. The dialysis had almost made her bones like soft. There's no structure, no form. So my mother was literally being picked up out of a bed like a pile of jello, taken from the bed in the nursing home to go to a dialysis place. Literally, she couldn't walk. And when the paramedics came, because they send paramedics to take her from the nursing home to the dialysis center, the paramedics said, "Why are they doing this? Why are you guys taking her for dialysis?" I said, "We're not doing it. I'm not doing it." But I had my family. They believed that they were doing the right thing because they were listening to the W medical system. So these guys, the guys, the paramedics, they were almost in tears, and so was I, because they knew that this woman should not be being picked up and carried. Like she was practically unconscious. She couldn't talk anymore at that point. So she couldn't say again that I don't want to do this. The only one that could tell them that is me, because she told me. She told my family too, but they didn't listen. So I'm telling you this to point out, number one, the dialysis center themselves, and you notice I'm not saying their names, okay? But the dialysis center themselves said they over-dialyzed her because she didn't have any water. I told them that in the beginning. She didn't have any water in her body, no system, nothing. What are you doing? When she had a problem from the nursing center, they had to take her to the hospital. They took her to a hospital, and a neurosurgeon came in, because we were trying to find out why my mother lost her ability to speak and all of this. And the neurosurgeon said, "Listen, I got to be honest with you, they over-dialyzed her. She's being over-dialyzed, and that's the problem." So, now naturally hearing that, and I knew that, I wanted to talk to this doctor. That doctor disappeared. Never saw him again. I don't know, the hospital got rid of that dude or something. I don't know, we couldn't find him. But he was right. He was right. So that's two instances. The dialysis center themselves over-dialyzed, and they knew it, and they said she took the water off. I told them that. Now you got a neurologist telling us that. Now, I'm going to leave that alone for a second. Remember, my mother was murdered, and she was tortured to death. Okay? And the murderer is still out. Still out murdering people. Still out murdering people. It's almost like everybody knows who the murderer is, but nobody's going to do anything about it. So I'm going to jump to somebody else. Now, I can't tell you who this person is, because I don't have the right to do that. But I know them personally. It's my personal experience. So I'm telling you. Okay? 2 instances. The first one. Person is 80 years old. 80 years old. Being told that they have diabetes and end-stage renal failure or renal disease or kidney failure, whatever you want to call it. Okay? And they need the W system is recommending that they take dialysis. 80 years old. 80 years old. 80 or 81. Okay. Now, that person went to another doctor. Indian doctor. So for those of you who think only W's are the brightest people in the world, this is an Indian doctor. I don't know if you guys frown upon that or not. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm done with all that, the lies. No more lies. So anyway, the point is that this doctor told this lady, don't get involved in that.